Today, we're going to dive into a question that sounds so simple, you'd think we solved it centuries ago. But as you're about to see, it's actually a massive biological puzzle that'll make you question how we even count living things. So let's just get right to it. What is a biological individual? Seriously, take a second. You probably have a picture in your head, an immediate, intuitive answer. For most of us, that picture is something like this. A single, self-contained animal. A lion, a horse, you, me. This is kind of our default setting, our folk biology, and it's built on everything we've seen. But nature loves to throw a wrench in our nice, neat little boxes. Because as soon as we step away from those familiar examples, we run into some really strange cases. And these aren't just quirky exceptions. They're cases that make our simple definition completely fall apart. Okay, so the first major headache is something called the boundary problem. Basically, it's about trying to figure out where one individual growing bigger stops and where making a whole new individual begins. That line between growth and reproduction, it's way, way blurrier than you'd think. Let's look at a huge example.
So take a forest of quaking aspen trees. When you look at it, you see thousands of separate trees. But here's the wild part. Underground, they can all be connected by one gigantic root system. Genetically, that whole forest is one single individual, what scientists call a genette. Each tree we see is just a clone, an offshoot called a ramette. So is it one thing or thousands?
And that just forces the question on us, right? What are we supposed to be counting here? Is the real individual this single massive forest? Or is it a population of thousands of trees? Our simple definition gives us absolutely no help here.
And that leads us right into the second big puzzle, the unity problem. This one messes with our idea that an individual has to be a single standalone thing. What happens when what we think are individuals are actually just parts of a much, much bigger team?
You see these examples everywhere once you start looking. A coral reef is a massive colony of tiny little connected critters. An ant colony or a beehive acts like one giant superorganism. A lichen isn't one thing at all. It's a fungus and an alga fused together. And then there's us. Your body is home to trillions of bacteria that you need to survive. So where does the entity you call you actually stop? So which is it? Is the real individual the single ant or the whole colony? Is it the tiny coral polyp or the entire reef structure? Our common sense approach is just totally breaking down. We need a better way to think about this. Okay, so things are messy. But thankfully, we can get a much clearer picture if we bring in the big guns, evolutionary theory. To solve these puzzles, we have to stop thinking about what an individual looks like and start thinking about what it does in the grand scheme of evolution. And this gives us a powerful new idea, the Darwinian individual. From this point of view, an individual isn't defined by its skin or its boundaries. It's defined by its job in evolution. A Darwinian individual is any entity, and I mean any, that can play the game of natural selection. It has to vary, it has to pass its traits on, and it has to have different levels of reproductive success. Suddenly, a gene, a cell, an organism, or a whole colony could be the player. So how does a group, like all the cells in your body, become such a clear-cut, rock-solid Darwinian individual? Well, evolution has a few tricks up its sleeve. For one, a developmental bottleneck, forcing every new generation to start from a single cell, like a zygote. That solves the aspen problem. Then there's the germ-soma distinction. This is huge. It's a division of labor where only some cells get to reproduce, forcing all the other cells to cooperate for the good of the whole. And finally, you need really high levels of integration to make sure everyone's on the same team. Okay, now we're getting to the final piece of the puzzle, the key distinction that's going to make all of this click into place. We need to pull apart two ideas that we normally just jam together: the idea of an organism and the idea of an individual. So think of it like this. On one hand, you've got the organism. That's a metabolic unit. It's a machine that's busy processing energy just to keep itself running. But on the other hand, you have the Darwinian individual. That's a reproductive unit. Its job is to make copies of itself and create a lineage over evolutionary time. Let's make this super clear and use you as the example. Think about you and all the bacteria in your gut. From a metabolic point of view, you work together as one big integrated system. You're one organism. You and your microbes are a team that processes food. But from an evolutionary point of view, you're totally separate. You pass on your human genes to your kids, and they pass on their bacterial genes to their kids. You are the Darwinian individual. The whole human plus microbe system is the organism. And that's it. That's the light bulb moment. The organism and the Darwinian individual don't always have to be the same thing. An entity can be one without being the other. And once you get that, all those puzzles we started with, they just start to melt away. The whole aspen forest is the Darwinian individual. A single tree is a metabolic organism. An ant colony can be the Darwinian individual, while the single ant is the organism. Now, this idea is bigger than just solving a few riddles. It gives us a completely new lens to view the entire history of life on Earth. It shows us that being an individual isn't just a given. It's something that has to be built. It's an evolutionary achievement.
In fact, if you look at the most pivotal moments in evolution, the origin of complex cells, the invention of animals like us, the rise of superorganisms like ant colonies, you can see all of them as these epic transitions in individuality. These were moments where groups of smaller individuals banded together to become a new, bigger, higher-level Darwinian individual. So how on earth does that happen? How do you get a bunch of competing individuals to cooperate? The mechanism has a really cool name: de-Darwinization. It's basically the process where the parts have to give up their own evolutionary game for the good of the team. So just picture a bunch of free-living single cells. At this point, every single one of them is its own Darwinian individual. They're all in it for themselves, competing to reproduce.
But then they start working together, forming a little collective. But there's a problem, right? There's still conflict. What's to stop one cell from cheating the system and just reproducing like crazy at the expense of everyone else? And this isn't just a theory. This is literally what cancer is. It's cells rebelling against the collective. And that's where de-Darwinization is the key. Through things like that germ-soma distinction we talked about, most of the cells are basically told, nope, you don't get to reproduce. They become the sterile worker cells, the soma, and only a tiny protected group of cells, the germline, gets to pass genes to the next generation. The parts have been tamed, their individual evolutionary potential is suppressed, and a powerful new individual is born. So we started with a simple question: what is an individual? And it's led us to this really profound place. As the philosopher Peter Godfrey Smith says, when you analyze things this way, that big, fuzzy, mysterious question, what is life, it starts to fade away. We don't need some single magical property. What we have are real, powerful scientific ideas like metabolism, reproduction, and evolution. And that leaves us with one final kind of mind-bending thought to chew on. The whole story of life has been this repeating pattern of individuals banding together, suppressing their own selfish interests to create larger, more complex individuals. Cells did it to make us. Ants did it to make colonies. Which really makes you wonder, are we the end of that story? Are we the final chapter? Or are we just the parts of the next great transition, just waiting to happen?